4. Welcome to our study in the book of Romans. This is Sonship Establishment, and this is going to be lesson 7. Now, we've been talking about the two inheritances. Your heir of God inheritance that you get automatically just by trusting Jesus Christ to be your Savior. But we were focusing on your joint heir inheritance. And that one has a condition attached to it. We've been over that several times and looked at that. So I know that that is not a surprise to you. But I want you to think with me for a moment about your joint heir inheritance. And the reason I want you to think with me about it, I want you to have that in your mind. And I want you to be thinking about it even after you leave here. We're going to look at these verses in just a moment. But the reason I want you to do that is because it is your knowing about this joint heir inheritance that contains, there's a doctrine in there, and that is going to produce a patient endurance of the things that are going to come your way. It's that knowledge and knowing what's involved in that inheritance. That's part of what's going to produce that patient endurance of the sufferings of this present time. Also, the reward that you're going to get. And I want to talk about this just for a moment. Because of the way we used to study the Bible, the old systematic theology of jumping from one place to another place to another place and putting it all together, trying to create a doctrine out of that, and you'd wind up with a bunch of verses out of Israel's program and some verses out of Paul's epistles, and you're trying to mesh them all together. Here's the way we always understood reward. And I'm telling you this, and I know you'll understand it. But don't go out of this place talking about it, because if you do, people are going to look at you like you're more nuts than they already do. So here's the point. The way we used to understand reward was you live a life for Jesus and you get reward. And we would think of it in terms of this. I go to church. I read my Bible. I pray. I talk to people about the Lord. I, conduct myself in a way that's pleasing to Him, and I'm racking up points. And then when I get to the judgment seat of Christ, I'm going to get, we used to talk about the crowns. We're going to get these crowns, and that's the way we would put all that together. Now, you need to start coming to the understanding that your reward in eternity is directly tied to your sonship. And the idea that you're going to get this big reward for just doing a bunch of great stuff is not biblical. That's not what the Bible's teaching you. That's what preachers have taught us. That's what I taught for years. That's not it. There are two inheritances. We've talked about both of them. One of them you get automatically, you do nothing for. The other one does have a condition attached to it, and that's the one the rewards are attached to. And so I just want you to have that in your mind. Now, let's take a look at these verses that we find these in Romans 8. Look in verse 16 and 17. The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. And if children, then heirs. Heirs of God. And there's that first inheritance. And joint heirs with Christ, if so be that we suffer with Him, that we may be also glorified together. Now, this is the beginning of the transformation that's going to take place in your inner man. If you've been waiting for that, we're looking at what that first part of that is going to be. And what's going to transform you, first of all, is the knowledge that you have this joint heir inheritance. And if you remember, the last time we actually had sessions, it seems like forever since we did that, But if you remember when we did that, one of the things that I pointed out to you was the enormity of your joint heir inheritance. The fact that your father's business continues to grow and your inheritance in that business grows right along with it. And where will that business be in eternity? And where will your inheritance be in eternity? Now, I didn't say that to you for you to become greedy, but I'm saying that to you because what you're looking at has to be seen for what it is, or you're going to wonder, is the reward of my inheritance actually greater than the sufferings that I'm going to go through? And what you're getting now is a picture of how they are not worthy to be compared with that. Well, so what you have to be thinking about is, I really am going to get a joint heir inheritance. You can't just look at it academically. I mean, just mentally. You have to think, this is as real as anything that takes place in your life. It's as real as showing up here on Sunday and us going through the sonship curriculum. It has to be, I know right now you're not looking at it, and that's why your father's telling you about it. Let me see if I can make an analogy here. When I was away, when we were journeying out, seeing family and stuff, well, actually, let me think where I found this, where this was asked. No, I guess this was over at, when we were over at your place, Ruby. I think when we were over there. But we were talking about the angels that sinned, can they continue to sin? Or did it stop? And, do they still have a free will? And the good angels, do they still have the ability to make a decision? Let me tell you, and you already know, many of you already know the answer to this. God did something that in the angelic rebellion, when they were rebelling, when they were joining Lucifer, and you understand this wasn't open. The Bible talks about Satan kind of going behind the scenes and doing this, going very strategically to angels that were in positions of authority in the government of God and getting them to join the rebellion. God did something that stopped that rebellion in its tracks. Anybody remember what that was?
He created hell?
Yeah. He created hell. Remember Jesus, when he talked about hell, he said it was created for the devil and his angels. Now, let me ask you. Angels get to travel in a way you and I don't get to travel, yes? Do you think those angels have ever gotten to take a look at hell? Have you ever gotten to take a look at hell? No. I know people write books and they go, oh, I died and I came back, but during my death, I got to see what hell was like. Okay. You said, Brother Mike, you're not buying that? Not really. But that's okay. That's okay. If that's your favorite book, you just, hey, help yourself. But here's my point. Angels have seen it. They've seen it. So for them, it's not a matter of belief. They've been looking at it. So you know what? If you're an angel and you haven't joined the rebellion, when you look at hell, what does that do for you all of a sudden?
Change your mind.
And angels think differently than people. And you're going to learn how angels think because you're going to be administrating and ruling over angels. You're going to judge angels. And you're going to learn, but they do think differently than we do. Because even when we know something is true, sometimes we still make stupid decisions. Have you ever noticed that? Please tell me that hasn't escaped your attention. But you look at that, but let me tell you, angels, when they look at that, they see it, and they, look, Neil Armstrong would say, he went to the moon. There are people in this country that don't believe, I'm not arguing the point, don't believe we went to the moon. They believe we went out in Nevada or Arizona or somewhere and filmed that and then put the hoax up that, we went to the moon. I don't really care what you believe about that. It has nothing to do with sonship. But here's my point. Neil Armstrong believes he was on the moon. He got in a rocket ship and he landed somewhere, and he believes he went to the moon. Now, because he saw it. I didn't see it. I'll be the first to admit, I didn't see it. I wasn't on the ship. But I see something in the Word here, and I'm supposed to believe it. And I'm supposed to believe it to the point that I don't need to see it to believe it, because my Heavenly Father told me about it. Or you understand what I'm saying about that? So when He says to you, this is not for no reason, that you're given two inheritances, and this joint heir inheritance is the one He's going to focus on now and talk about and give you a little bit of information concerning it. This is supposed to be a huge deal for you, because that is the first thing He's giving you to produce a patient endurance of whatever kind of suffering may actually wind up coming your way. And if you try to get through it in another way, there's going to come a day when your suffering is going to overpower you. That whatever little mind thing you're doing to get through it is not going to be sufficient. So that's why I'm saying to you right here at the start, before we kind of get into this, and that is, don't neglect that when we read these two verses, we're not just reading two more verses so we can move on to the next two. This is the start of what's supposed to be working in your inner man. Look at it that way. And you've got to be thinking about this thing all the time. Now, as we're talking about that, let me just tell you that there is plenty coming your way. There is two, I'm going to call them persons, that you're going to have to deal with. Does anybody know who they are? Okay. The evil man and the strange woman. Did you get them backwards? Okay. I've done that before. I think y'all have caught me doing that. The evil man is really who? The world. And the strange woman? The policy of evil. And those are going to be throwing some things your way. And here's how I want you to view those. And I think you already do. But you need to view those as a trap to get you away from your sonship life, for the purpose of you losing the reward of your inheritance. Because if they can be successful, you won't be involved in that joint heir inheritance. Now, I want to show you this in the book of Colossians. Now, you already know that if we're talking about the book of Colossians, we're talking about a level 2 son. So we're talking about someone that's advanced. And yes, I'm kind of jumping you up here. But in Colossians chapter 3, Paul is going to talk about the counterfeit wisdom that is going to infiltrate assemblies. By the way, just because we're involved in sonship does not mean that the counterfeit wisdom is not going to try to raise its head in this assembly. So you should know that. Kind of have that in your mind. The danger in the counterfeit wisdom is it sounds appealing. And so people listen to it. And when they do, then they begin to integrate it into their life. And when they do that, they're going to lose that joint heir inheritance. And their education and advancement as a son is going to stop. Now, there's some other things as a consequence as well, but let me leave it with that, and then let me just show you these verses out of Colossians. And this is the warning that Paul has given them. He says, "And this I say, lest any man should beguile you with enticing words." You know what enticing words are? But those are words that make whatever it is that's being talked about sound very appealing. Something that you would want. Beguile? Somebody tell me, what is that? What is it to be beguiled? Yeah, there's a clever deception going on here. You're being fooled, but you don't realize it. Being beguiled is you know, sort of like having the wool pulled over your eyes. We'll actually talk about that word later on. But here's the next one. Colossians chapter 2 and verse 8. Same chapter, just 4 verses later. Beware, here's the warning, lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit. And again, here's that deception, right out of the word deceit. After the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. He says you're going to get deceived by two things. Now look, I'm going to look, I'm in this with you. I'm going through the sonship education. This is a huge part of my life. But you need to know something. I don't know that what I'm about to tell you is anything that's new, especially, but I don't know if we really have this nailed down. Now, I'm going to tell it to you, but what you do with it is going to be up to you, because I can't do the sonship life for anybody else in this room. I can only do it for me. This is not a curriculum that I invented. All we're doing is going through the verses. So it's critical that we adhere to this. And you know the wonderful thing about a counterfeit? Maybe I should just ask you the question. If you were going to introduce something counterfeit to sonship, what is a very clever way to disguise it as being the counterfeit that it is?
Make it seem as original to the original as you can.
Make it as close to the original as you can. Now, Clinton's right on the money here. You know what you would actually do? You would include some elements of truth that people could recognize, and then you'd slide in the error right along with it. As a result, the counterfeit has done this over and over. I talked about there's two things up here that you're being spoiled through. One of them is the rudiments of the world, and the other one was the tradition of men. The rudiments of the world, folks, has to do with an aspect of the law. Now, we'll talk later about why it's called the rudiments of the world, why Paul is referring to it that way. But later, he's actually going to define that as the actual ordinances of the law that tell you don't eat this, don't touch that, all that kind of business. He's going to describe that for you. But that has to do with the law. But there's something besides the law out there, and that's the traditions of men. And traditions are something, what is any tradition? Somebody tell me. What's a tradition? Okay, all right. It's something that has been established and then passed down and practiced and passed down, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. All right, now that's important to understand right there, because I'm going to tell you what the traditions of men are. They are the things that you were taught before, that you grew up believing and thinking and even praying and practicing the whole bit, that the Bible never told you. Now, as I said, I'm trying to not trying to do preacher congregation here. I'm talking to you as a fellow son in this. You have to, if this is going to work for you. If you don't want it to work, I'm telling you how not to make it work right now. If this is going to work for you, you're going to have to know that the things that you believe and practice are the things you can put your finger on in Paul's epistles and say, this is how my apostle wants me to view this. Now let me give you an example of this. I don't want to just leave you hanging with that. Look back at this verse that we have on the PowerPoint. In fact, let me back it back up to that because we've gotten further. Verse 17, we're going to talk about this a little more in a second. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ, if so be that we suffer with Him. I'm going to talk to you about a little more in a minute about what it means to suffer with Him, what that is about. But suffering, the things that come our way, listen, this joint heir inheritance. Can we just establish another acronym here? This joint heir inheritance is obtained only one way. Here's the if so be. If so be that we live for Jesus. If so be that we do many wonderful things. If so be that we go to church. If so be that we, witness. If so be that we spend time in prayer. If so be, none of that makes the list. There's only one thing on the list. What is the one thing? There is a kind of suffering that is going to come your way, and that is the only way you get the joint heir inheritance. Now, you know what the tradition of men would say? There's another way. I talked to you about it just a while ago. Go to church, be a good person, say your prayers, do a witness, do all of those things, and you're going to get a reward. The Bible won't teach you that. That's a tradition of men. In preacher circles, you know what we call that? A sacred cow. It's something that people believe, and they believe it so strongly, they are not going to give it up. Well, at the end of the day, it's your decision what you do with things. But listen to me carefully. Listen, I'm begging you. As members, fellow members of this assembly, I am begging you, do not live your life according to a belief that comes out of your experience. Live your life according to the doctrine that's written in the epistles that belong to you. Here's what we are famous for. Something happens, and then we look back on it, and we put our interpretation on that event. And then we decide this is what God's doing, even though our apostle never tells us that one single time. You can't do that. You have bought into the counterfeit wisdom. And if you do, it will derail your sonship life. Are you with me here? I'm not saying, do you believe me? Did you just understand what I'm saying to you? If you buy into the counterfeit to any degree, it will eventually run you off the rails of sonship. It's going to take you in a different direction. Yes, it's going to be a slow process, but one day you're going to look around and you're going to be a long ways from sonship. And you know what you'll say? You'll say, well, sonship doesn't work. I tried that. No, you didn't try sonship. You tried the traditions of men. Churchianity. You tried that. You tried, you tried something that you identified in your life, but the Bible never said to you. Now, I could get up here and say, folks, you want to get a big reward when you go to heaven? Then here's what we're going to do. And I could make up a bunch of stuff that sounds very good. It would be beguiling you with enticing words. You want to hear one? We've got to be a friend to Israel. If we're not a friend to Israel, if we're a friend to Israel, God promised to bless us, and if we're a friend to Israel, we're going to get all these blessings. And guess what? We're going to get wealth and blessings and good health, and our church is going to flourish. You know why that? You don't think that sounds good? Do you know how many churches are preaching that today? Because they don't understand the dispensation in which they live. Now, personally, I do like the nation of Israel. They're our closest ally. I was going to say in the Middle East, maybe in the world. Yeah, now. But here's the deal. There are no blessings attached to that. You say, well, why do you feel that way? Because they are not a member of a group that wants to kill infidels. I kind of am more comfortable with people who don't want to kill me than I am with those who do. Call me crazy. I just feel more comfortable with folks that are my friends. See, I don't think you have to be a genius to figure this out. But here's the point I'm trying to make. With all of my heart, I'm trying to make it, because this is going to be the point that this assembly is going to stumble at. All that old baggage that we all brought with us of thinking this is how it works. Listen to me carefully. I don't care what you can point to in your life. Was there ever something I put my hand to in the past and really wanted it to be a success and prayed for it to be a success, and it was a success? Yes. Was there ever anything I put my hand to and wanted to be a success and really prayed for it to be a success, and it wasn't? Yes. So instead of going to the Bible, you know what I did is I just looked at those circumstances and tried to invent an explanation of what God was doing. If you want to know what God's doing, do you know the only place you're going to be able to go to find that? In this book. In this book. I'm telling you the place right now where the policy of evil is going to kill this assembly. You mark my words, this is the issue for us. May not be the same issue for other assemblies. This is the issue for us. We cannot, if you can't, you want to tell me what God's doing? You will say, here's what God's doing in my life. Then you need to be able to go to Paul's epistles and put your finger on it and say, and here's how I know. If you can't, you bought into the counterfeit. Can I be any plainer? Biggest thing we used to have going at the church I was at in Louisiana was, when I was youth director. I was a lot of things. I was the co-pastor. I was the youth director. I also principaled the school that we had, kindergarten through 12th grade. I was the bus director. And I ran bus routes in the B&C Sunday school. I had energy then. I had hair. That's why I don't have any now. The biggest thing we ever did with our kids all year long was have soul winning banquet. Our kids really got taught how to win people to Christ, and those folks showed up at our church. We wound up with adult deacons in our church that our teenagers led to Christ. Now, the biggest thing we did all year is we had a soul winning banquet where we not only honored the kids that went out there and got busy for Jesus, but it was kind of a special time for them. It was a big deal. We were having this at these folks' house out in the country. They had a big swimming pool and big ranch and big nice home and all of that. And we were having it in the fall of the year, and it was just going to be great. We always decorated and had a theme, and I don't remember if it was a Hawaiian theme or something, but the candles floating in the pool and all this stuff going around. And guess what? All of a sudden, a cold front blew in about 2 days ahead of time. And I'm talking about, even though we're in South Louisiana, it was cold. Not Nebraska cold, but cold. And I started praying for God to change the weather. And you know what? I told him everything I thought he would want to hear. This is not about, me. This is about what folks are doing for you. We're winning people to Christ. How much more important could it be? And I'm bargaining with God. And you know what? And then I'm fasting. Because you know what? Got those verses over in Israel's program that talked about fasting and prayer, right? Now I'm doing that. And I'm begging God. And then when people are saying to me, the folks that are setting up are saying, do you want us to stop and let's now set everything up inside? Because they had this huge, big den area we could accommodate everybody. And they said, you want us to set up inside? Oh, I couldn't say yes to that. Do you know why? That would show my lack of faith. See, because I had that little thing in my head. So I go, no, God's going to do this. We're doing it outside. You just keep rolling. And man, I mean, I'm praying. The day of the banquet, the night of the banquet, you know what? It was the coldest day yet. And the wind was whipping. You ever seen a pile of unlit candles blown to one side of a pool? That's lovely. We rented those big heaters that they're kind of S-shaped, you know, and you light at one end and as the air goes through the deal, it comes out the other end. It's like a jet heater. And we put them all around this big patio area around the pool. It was so cold that even with the heaters, we had to abandon everything and go inside. So when that was over, I went to every preacher, every pastor I knew, because you know what? I crossed every T, I dotted every I, and God didn't answer my prayer. You know what? It never occurred to me, God's not changing the weather. You know why? Because I knew God was omnipotent and He can do anything, right? But I didn't understand sonship. And when you understand sonship, you understand God's not dealing with you as an omnipotent God. He's dealing with you as a father. And I also didn't know God had something more valuable to do with us than simply change the weather. Something that would have actually reflected greater glory to Him. I couldn't have comprehended that back then. I couldn't have understood that. So I go to every pastor that I had any respect for at all. I lay this whole scenario out and I go, why didn't God answer my prayer? I need to, because you know what? I could not be content to just let those kind of inconsistencies go and keep preaching to everybody. How in the world can I preach to folks if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed? God will answer your prayer. By the way, I have yet to see anybody move a mountain. That's what the mustard seed was about. And by the way, when he talks about the mustard seed, you know why he mentions the mustard seed? Because it was, what did Jesus say? It's the what? It's the least of the seeds. So you know what he's really saying? This least amount of faith, you'll be able to say to this mountain, remove thyself, and it'll be cast into the sea. I've never seen anybody move a mountain 6 inches, let alone throw it in the sea. Have you? And that's mustard seed faith. I'm thinking if God can throw a mountain in the sea, He could just stop a cold front. Right? So I go, you know what? I always get the same question. Well, do you know of any unconfessed sin in your life? And that, you know, and I go, no, I took care of everything. I mean, man, I kept short accounts. I mean, I confessed everything. I made sure I was right with God. And then, you know, then you'd hear this one. Well, did you really have faith? Yes. Yes, I didn't even make a plan B. And they say, well, you know, and then, you know, they did all the things that everybody always does. And they always go, well, what about the other people that were working with you? Do you remember Achan? You know, the whole army lost because Achan buried that wedge of gold under the tent. Was there sin in the camp? Well, it'd be nice to blame it on someone else, but you know, that just didn't work for me. At the end of it, you know what every one of those guys said? They go, well, Mike, you know, sometimes God just does things that we just don't understand. Maybe, you know, He was, you know, and here it comes. Maybe He wanted y'all inside for a reason. And then you just, you know what? And if you can leave it there, you are easily fooled. Maybe he just wanted, and by the way, I was easily fooled because for years I would have left it right there. He just wanted you inside for a reason. Who knows what that reason is? And then you know what? Now up to our imagination, we can now begin to build a list of things God might have been doing by putting us inside. But I now understand God didn't move us inside. You say, well, why did cold weather come? That's just the way weather happens. We planned it on a day that it was going to be. God did it. And you know what? And then I heard this one too. I almost forgot about it. The devil did it. The devil did it. The devil didn't want y'all out there having that full-blown, because you know what? Everybody got real excited about soul winning. Y'all kept going. No, he wanted to try to pour cold water on that fire, so the devil did it. Well, you know what? That really didn't work for me, because now I'm wondering, how come God couldn't overrule the devil? That's a good question, isn't it? How come the devil won that one? He said, well, I tell you, I don't care what the devil does. I'm not quitting, you know, and you do all that stuff. I did all of that. I know how all that works. Here's my point. All of those things I was being told, all of those things I thought, I couldn't have gone to the epistles that belonged to me and put my finger on one single verse that ever told me that's the way I was supposed to be viewing all of that. There's not a single verse that ever told me that in the dispensation of grace, God is changing the weather. We used to go, hey, you make that trip every time. Now, dear God, you know, just watch over us and keep us safe on the trip. Here goes some of those sacred cow. Put angels on every fender. You know, angels are going like, don't put me on his fenders. I've seen him drive. I don't want there. And we think, you know, that's what God, and you could even point to something. Man, I dozed off, and when I woke up, it was just in time to avoid, just fill in the blank. And so God did it. You know what you did? You took an experience that you read the interpretation back into. But you can't find a single verse in your epistles to tell you to think about it that way. So here's my point to you, and I belabored it on purpose because I understand now that this is the issue for this assembly. You look around this assembly, I'm going to tell you now, the people who are going to stay with us in the assembly are the people that are going to be able to overcome the traditions of men in favor of the Word of God. And those that cannot are here for a while, and then they'll be gone. Because that counterfeit is going to put you on a whole different track. So I will say one more thing about it. You can't have it both ways. You can't observe the counterfeit and the truth and think they're compatible, that you'll include them both. One is going to win out. You're going to wind up giving one of them up. Now that means you're going to have to give up some ideas. I'm just telling you now because I understand now the crevice that the policy of evil is going to get into and try to push this assembly. And so we just have to come to grips with that. I've been honest with you as I know how. I don't have an axe to grind. I love every one of you. I'm not against you. I'm for you. That's why I'm telling you this. And by the way, if I knew it and I didn't tell you, what kind of pastor would I be? So I'm telling you now that the future of this assembly depends on us being able to, and you know what, since I'm on this, I might as well, because this is the area the policy of evil is going to use right now, I should talk about this other aspect of this, and that is, to most people, if you were to say this, they would say, well, I do know the Bible is the final authority, and if I can't find it in the Bible, well, that does bother me. So you know what they would do? instead of saying, well, that's true, they would try to find a way around that. Would you say but? They would go, but, yeah. They're going to try to find a loophole. Well, there's the very expression of the attitude that needs to be adjusted. You can't be, it's this book, or you might as well not have it at all, folks. If it's going to be this book plus something else, you've ruined it. Think about your salvation. Oh, I'm going to ask Jesus to save me, but I'm going to work just in case that ain't enough. Guess what? You're not going to make it. That won't work. Oh, I understand I'm supposed to serve God out of my new identity in Christ, but just in case I'm going to do that, you've ruined it. My sonship. Well, I understand what Brother Mike's saying, and I agree with, listen, I don't want to say it this way. I'm not trying to be, I'm not being ugly about it. It's not that I'm not trying to be. I'm not being ugly about it. I'm just shooting straight with you right now. This is the tipping point for us, this issue right here. It's not today, but it will be. It will come to a day when this is going to be the tipping point. We cannot allow the traditions of men to overrule what this book says, no matter how many experiences you've interpreted that way. Are you with me? I'm warning you about this. And that's what that warning is about. Not that one, the one in, let me pull it back up, in Colossians 2:8. That's what that one is about. Those Colossians, someone was attempting to spoil them through this type of a measure. I'm going to do one more, just because I think we've got to get it down. Do you understand that as a son, you have liberty in decision making? Do you understand? Do you understand that that's a cornerstone of sonship? When you're being told what to do, that's not indicative of an adult son. What's that indicative of? A child. A child has limited decision making. It doesn't mean he can't do anything on his own, but you know what? The important stuff is left up to someone else. Remember what Galatians said? And the child, although he's an heir, differeth nothing from a servant. Why? Because servants get told what to do. I'm going to say this one more time just because I want you to see this. Let's take Randall and Beverly. Why are they here? The old way would have said, because God brought them here. That sounded good, right? God brought them here. But actually, God did not wake Beverly up with a dream in the middle of the night in which she said, Randall, wake up. An angel has appeared to me in a dream, and God told me there's a church in Monahans that we have to go to. It's a little cinder block building, and it has a parking lot with a fence around it. It looks like a prison yard. Those of you that have come since, we took the prison yard fence down. It not only was a big high chain link, but it had that barbed wire and 3 strands around the only thing I can't remember is, did the barbed wire slant in or out? Were we trying to keep people in here, or were we trying to keep them out of here? I can't remember which way it slanted. It slanted out. Okay, so it wasn't a prison then, it was a fortress. Okay. Whew. I couldn't remember which way the barbed wire slanted. That was appetizing for a church, wasn't it? That was great. Let's go to the prison. Okay. So God did not, did God wake you up in the, don't say yes, did God wake you up in the middle of the night? Because it'd be just like Beverly to go, that's exactly what happened, you know. Where am I? Oh man, I think I'm out of time. Where am I on the? 44. Okay, good. Okay, let me just do this and we'll take our break. Look, how did you come here? Someone invited you, did they not?
And I was really leery of it.
Okay, and you can say, yeah, well, you were leery, but see, God's the one that had you come. Well, you're reading that in. I'm going to say it to you again. Show me where Paul says that's what God is doing. If you can't show it to me, you're now promoting the tradition of men. Are you with me here? I know this is a hard thing. I'm just saying, do you agree? Do you understand? Yes. Rather, I just need you to understand. Agreeing is up to you, 100%. I've already told you. You don't have to agree with me, but if you don't, there will come a day when your misunderstanding of this issue is going to lead you out of this assembly. And you'll criticize us. You'll go to other folks and say, yeah, I was over there, man. And I'll tell you what, I was over there for 3 years. I'll tell you, that's not right. You wouldn't believe. I heard that guy get up and say that God was not changing the weather. I heard that guy get up and say, you know, and then you know what you'll say? You'll say, God has the power to do anything. You misquoted me. I never said God wasn't omnipotent. I said that in sonship, He has chosen not to deal with you that way. And how many verses have we looked at to demonstrate that? But it won't matter. That's still what will be said. It doesn't matter. Here's Bud and Nancy. Did God give you a vision, Bud? Or you know, I know how this happened. He drove by here one day and looked at that sign out front, and there's a verse sitting at the bottom of that sign, Romans 16:25. The preaching of Jesus Christ according to the revelation of the mystery. And Bud already understood about the mystery. And so he goes home and am I telling this right? You don't have to agree if I'm not right. You can correct me. Okay. All right. He goes home and says to Nancy, we got to visit that church. They had Romans 16:25 on their sign. You know what? They made a decision based on what they saw. Y'all made a decision. You may have second-guessed that decision, but you wound up coming. God didn't, if God was just leading you, He doesn't need a sign. We wouldn't have to put up a sign. If God was leading you, no one would have to invite you. God would just invite you. Hey, if you're going to do Israel's program, let an angel just show up and tell you what to do. That's what He did with them. Why not have the whole thing? Instead, you use all of the means that anybody on their own could make a decision, but you won't let that be it. You're going to have to pin it back on God. I'll tell you why you're here, because you decided to be here. That's why you're here. God did not look out and say, here's who I'm picking to be here. You're here because you made a decision to be here. You can make a decision to never come back. I hope you don't, but you could. You can make a decision to only come part of the time. You'll make whatever decision you want, but guess what it's going to be? Because God is treating you as an adult son, it's going to be, guess what? Your decision. You know, I told you, you know why I'm here? I made decisions that brought me here. That's why I'm here. Now, if you disagree, that's fine. Just keep it to yourself. Because if you come and say it to me, from now on, I'm going to ask you to show me where God says that's the way you're supposed to think about that. Because I'm going to remind you now every single time that you're either following the Word or the tradition of men. Because I am not going to allow this to kill this assembly. So get on the bus, get off the bus. I would encourage you not to stand in front of the bus. I'm not trying to be ugly about it, but look, the policy of evil is not playing with this thing. And I'm not going to treat it like it's something we can't talk about. If this is one of your sacred cows and I just slaughtered it, too bad. It needed to be slaughtered. Look, you can go home and have a good cry over it and get over it, and let's get in the Word and move on. Yes? So there we are. And anybody that comes will get the same thing. You say, well, what people don't like that? There's about 50 different choices out there. Go get in it. I can't live this way anymore. There are people in this room that can't live this way anymore. But this is the issue for us. This is the issue. So there it is, out in the open, for everybody to see. If you can't put your, and don't say this is why I say before the break. Don't say, well, I may not be able to go find a verse. By the way, you didn't ever believe that because you found that in Paul's epistles. You didn't never believe that for that reason anyway. You believed that because somebody taught you something that wasn't biblical. And then you tried to read it in. Of course you did. I did too. I'm not throwing you under the bus for that. I did the same thing. We read it into everything. Now it's time to know better. Now we're adults. Time to know better. And just because, and you say, well, I can't find it in here, but you know what? It's happened to me so many times, you'll never tell me. Fine. Fine. Use that statement. You played right into the hands of the policy of evil. That's exactly where he wants you. That's what he needs. For you, for whatever reason, to abandon what you're told. And you say, well, why is that going to run me off the rails? Because there's coming a time in your sonship life where he's going to tell you something that's going to run 180 degrees against this little sacred cow you've got pinned up over in back. And you're going to make a decision in favor of the sacred cow, and that's going to be the end of it. I'm just telling you now. I'm warning you not to let that happen. If it's not in the book, you followed a tradition. Everybody got that? It's either in the book or it's not. If it's not in the book, please don't poison other people with it. Just keep it to yourself. And you self-destruct on your own. But this assembly has to survive. This assembly has to go forward in sonship. And you are never going to occupy one place of authority. Not one, by believing the traditions of men. Not one bit. Okay, now, my rant is over. But I'm really ranting, I hope you understand, against the policy of evil here. That's why I'm ranting against the traditions of men. That's what I'm ranting against. If I didn't care about you, you know what? I just, I was going to say insult you, and you're going to go, well, I thought that's what you just did. But, I would just, I guess, if I didn't care about this assembly, I would take the easier road. I would say all the things that would just make you feel good about it. And I'd carefully structure my sentences so the people that believe what I just said, they'd be happy. And the people that don't believe that, well, they could interpret that in the way they could be happy. And I'd try to do what most preachers do. I'd try to find that middle ground, make everybody happy. In case you haven't figured it out yet, I really don't care how happy you are. I care about your sonship. You didn't hire me to be your best buddy. I don't mind being that. You hired me to be your pastor, yes? And I've got to look out for you. And as the overseer of this flock, I'm looking at this flock and I'm going, this is going to kill this flock. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going on it again, aren't I? Okay, I'm stopping.